Hey everyone, Chris here with another filler episode. Today I'm taking a look at Space Fortress 2. Yes, seriously, the game I stopped working on way back in the middle of 2009. Now, I finally managed to put together just a few little screens so that people could actually play this thing. So I've released it on my website in its unfinished state, though, truth be told, the gameplay is 100% complete. It's just missing sound effects, music, menus, race customization, and a whole bunch of other features. In fact, the title screen and the gameplay is pretty much all that works. But if you want to take a look at it, just head on over to my website at www.pixelships.com/sfort2. And there you can download it and give it a try if you want to. So, part of the reason I stopped working on this game was mostly because I ended up with a job that was cutting into my time, but it kind of doesn't fit with what I really want to do in terms of game design anymore. It's not a hardware accelerated game, and it only runs 640 by 480. It would be really hard to modernize this, so I figured it's not really worth the effort. Plus, it's also a game that's really about micromanagement, and I know not a lot of people are kind of into that, so I figured I'd just release it for free. Now, I'm doing this as sort of a commentation. I've already played the gameplay there you're seeing on screen right now, so I'm just commentating on what I've done. And I've already selected my own race, and there's 4 races to choose from. I've selected the race of the opponents, and now I'm choosing my weapons. And each race has different weapons they can choose from. And generally, you're either going to select 3 level 1 weapons, a level 2 and a level 3 weapon, or 2 level 1 weapons and 3 level 2 weapons. And here I'm selecting my defense gun. The defensive gun is basically to shoot down the enemy shot, since you're just one massive fortress. You can't move or anything like that. Armor specialization is nice. This lets you choose 2 weapons that you want your armor to be specially designed to resist, so that when you're dealing with those particular weapons, you don't have to worry too much about them. Really, the choices of weapons to resist against just depends on what you hate dealing with. And yeah, there seriously are 32 weapons in the game. Emergency functions are really nice. These are just really powerful power-ups that just work instantly to do something to help you out. The antimatter spread is usually a good go-to because it clears most of the enemies from the screen. And here we go. Defense computer is online, the MFDs are booted up, we're ready. So, as you can see, there's different buttons at the bottom of each MFD. The primary MFD is the big one, and the 2 secondary ones are below it, and they all have the same functions, they all work the same way. There's also a particular help MFD, and this is really important for new players because it shows them what all the controls are, what all the power-ups are, tips for playing, etc, etc. And you can keep the MFDs open in any way you want. You can keep it in the secondaries, you can keep it in the primaries, wherever. Energy allocation is really important. Here you determine where all the energy from your reactor goes to. Whether it restores your shields, restores your energy matrix, goes into your damage control system, or provides cooling. Because you can see the temperature matrix at the bottom, lots of different temperatures to worry about. And I'm about to be under attack here, so let's get ready to fire. And yeah, all the action happens in the sensor window there. I'm firing shots at the enemies and firing my defensive gun to take down their shots. Basically the way it works is the turret at the bottom is referred to as the Omni turret. It takes no damage, it doesn't mean anything short of where you're firing from. The way it works is that when an enemy shoots at you, if their shot hits the bottom strip, you take damage, because that bottom strip represents a 180-degree arc around your base. Because the space fortresses are sort of like these bases that protect planets. They emit a powerful shield around the whole planet, but because of how draining it is, the fortress itself really isn't too hardened or anything, so it's got to have someone on board to defend against enemies that would seek to destroy it to get past the shield. Now here I'm setting up my damage control priorities, because that's kind of important. Your damage control repairs system is based on what their priority is. The higher the priority, the faster it'll get repaired. But of course, if you set everything to priority 1, then they're all going to repair at the same rate anyways, so Now what I'm using right there is the proximity beam to try and find that enemy there that's cloaked. 1/4 of all of the enemies in this game have special abilities that they can use, which, considering that there's 16 different kinds of enemies for each of the 4 different races, that means 4 enemies from each different race will have special abilities that they can use. And yeah, I'm showing here that you can actually scroll the sensors with either the arrow keys or with the middle mouse button. And that was the end of the first wave. The game split up into waves to make it more, just to give you a break from the action between things and to break stuff up. It would be pretty hard dealing with a trickle of enemies in this game. That's kind of actually how it works in the original Space Fortress that I made way back in 1999, is you're dealing with enemies as they just randomly appear. Here, you're dealing with waves of enemies that it's still random to some extent, but there's at least some sort of prediction. Like, the further you get, the more deadly the waves are going to get. One big difference from the original Space Fortress is that in the original, the enemies got stronger the further you got. Here, the enemies don't get stronger at all, you just have to deal with more of them at a time. And yeah, I'm accelerating time every so often with the tab key just to get things to go by faster. Even with using time acceleration, battles in this game can take a really long time. Oh great, it's another cloaked enemy. At least they become visible when you shoot them. And that one dropped a power-up, so I'm going to use a retrieval bot to pick it up. You can also self-destruct the retrieval bots, which is really handy. And there's my new power-up, the auxiliary computer. Basically, if my computer goes offline, the auxiliary computer fills in for it. And you can turn power-ups on and off. They have a time limit to them, so you can use them for as long as you want to and turn them off when you don't need them anymore. Though, considering I'm playing as the Terrans, they have really pathetic power-up longevity, so yeah, all the different races have different strengths and weaknesses, so it makes it more interesting that way. Oh yeah, the trifocal laser. The most powerful weapon in the game. Just watch this thing. Yeah, watch me miss this. Boy. Yeah, it can be a little tricky to hit the enemies when you're new to this game, especially considering that some of them are really good at dodging attacks. You might have noticed that the enemies have a sort of AI bar on them, which indicates how many AI points they have. The more AI points the enemy has, the smarter they are, essentially. And the enemies can do some crazy things, like some of them know how to dodge attacks, some of them can actually determine how close they should be to your base based on where you're aiming, and some of them are even smart enough not to shoot shots straight into your defense guns. You may have also noticed too that the lower your energy levels are, the slower your weapons fire. I'm not having so much luck with the trifocal laser today. It is a hard weapon to use, but when it does damage, it does a ton of damage. So yeah, you get a basic idea of how this is working. So let's take a look at playing as one of the other races. Now, here I'm playing as the Ukri, and I'm about to get assaulted by a massive number of Cartaculan fighters. And now the Ukri is a pretty interesting race to play as, because they have really strong defensive capabilities, but really poor offensive capabilities. Though they have access to some interesting weapons like the beam laser, which is incredibly easy to use. Unfortunately, a lot of enemies are resistant to it, meaning that, well, when you shoot an enemy, they turn white for a moment to indicate that you're doing normal damage. But if you shoot an enemy and they don't turn white, it means they're resisting your attack, and your attacks are doing far less damage than they should. Though another weapon that the Ukri get that's really interesting is the Hyper Beam, which is, it's not a very powerful weapon, but it's rapid fire and it goes straight through shields, meaning it only damages the hull and systems. but it's still easier to use the beam laser. The Cartaculans love to attack in massive groups because they have terrible defensive capabilities. Oh boy, one of those things. That thing shooting the particle infusion beam shots, or pi beam shots as they're called, that's a Declamon. That's one of the Cartaculan fighters that's really difficult to deal with, particularly considering that they're resistant to the hyper beam and the beam laser, which are the two level 2 and level 3 weapons that I chose. So I'm having to use my level 1 weapons to defeat it, but at the same time I've got all these other enemies attacking me too, so I'm just going for the other enemies first, just to deal with them so that I'm not taking as much damage. I'm already taking considerable damage to the shield generator, now my cooling system's damaged too. And yeah, something else too is, you'll notice my shields never actually went down during any of that. You take damage based on how high your shields are, and what the shield temperature is. The shield temperature raises as a result of the amount of damage, the amount of shots that you're being hit with, as opposed to the amount of damage you take. But no matter what level the shields are at, some of the damage always passes through to your hull. But so long as it's not that much, then your damage control will take care of it instantly. But, when you got a ton of enemies assaulting you, you're going to take a ton of damage even through the shields. It also doesn't help when your shields have been damaged in the first place. Still got that Declamon attacking me. Considering the wave just ended, I think dealing with that guy right now would probably be a good idea. But he's got 4 of those protection orbs following around him, which is pretty lucky. They usually only appear with 1 or 2, sometimes 3, but 4 is really uncommon. There we go. Okay, so looking at my damage control there, I took a bit of damage, but by allocating all kinds of reactor resources to damage control, that gets it all repaired up pretty quickly. So if you're fast on the draw and you take out a couple or 3 enemies at first really quickly, then you won't take nearly as much damage. Now this is much later in the battle, which you can kind of tell because my kill count is much higher. But yeah, I'm taking out that ship right there. When it was destroyed, it released a whole bunch of Zinmite fighters. And yet there's still a ton of other enemies assaulting me too. Now what I just did right there, if you right click on the power-up MFD, you turn all of your power-ups on at once. And yeah, I just noticed the life support system went down, but life support is one of those interesting things, because even once life support is down, you still have atmospheric levels, so until the atmospheric levels are gone, you're still okay. And that goes down to those 5 warning lights at the bottom there. So long as the warning lights aren't flashing, you're still good. They only go solid to indicate that problems are about to happen, and they flash when problems are happening or have happened. So as you can see, the NaCl4 light, which is the strange atmosphere that the Ukri need to survive, it's solid because atmospheric levels are dropping, but because they're still there, it isn't flashing. Yeah, you don't want to see things flash in this game. Flashing things equals bad. And yeah, I'm using the proximity beam now because I've noticed the sensors are not doing their job properly. In fact, if the sensors go offline, you can't even see anything except for proximity beam stuff. Yeah, those Teklakut fighters love to split when you shoot them. If you shoot them hard enough the first time, you're okay, but usually just 1 or 2 shots and there they go, they split. Yeah, fighting enemies when your sensors are damaged is pretty difficult, but because of how useful the proximity beam is, you can get used to it. And there we go, life support's finally back to normal. I focused my repair resources on life support for a moment there just to get it back going again properly. Oh yeah, the hull light's on too. It's because hull integrity is pretty, low enough to be worrisome. But now we're back into green. Sort of. Actually, funny thing about the music you're listening to right now, this was actually going to be one of the main tunes for this game, but I'm instead going to be using it for the next game I'm coming up with, Vector Zone. So expect to hear more of the music when you play that game. But it was originally intended for this game, so as you can imagine, a lot of my music that I intend for certain games I have to reimagine for other games. It happens. Eh boy, another Declamon, a whole bunch of enemies attacking me now. This isn't going so well. All power-ups on, let's do some damage. Life support's gone again, go figure. The Ukri have very temperamental life support because of this very special environment that they need to survive. Actually, I just noticed my Wave Blaster's offline too. One effect you might have noticed too is the MFDs can actually glitch up when you get hit. Or even the indicators at the bottom can gray out. And all my power-ups just went offline. I've only been using them all at once. Another thing I should note too is this game actually plays at a really good frame rate. When I was first developing it, I was doing it on a monitor that runs 120 Hz, and the game literally will play 120 frames per second if you can handle that. Oh yeah, antimatter spread. That was getting a bit difficult, so I figured it'd be a good time to pull out the antimatter spread there. I only get to use it once though, unless I can find another one. And everything's fading out because the atmosphere is now gone. It's not just the life support failure, it's no longer an atmosphere. I'm trying to get the life support focus repaired, but it's not happening, so there we go. Those emergency functions really help. But now I don't have any emergency functions left, so if I end up in a critical situation again, I'm probably going to be dead. And you may have noticed he was shooting an EMP weapon at me. There's an EMP light at the bottom because of those strange EMP effects. EMP effects, they either make your systems go strange, like changing your weapons on you or changing your allocation grid setting, but they can have some other nasty effects too. You can even lose entire systems when your EMP levels are really high. Fortunately, there's very, very few ways to get EMP effects. The fusion cannon and the EMP weapons are the only weapons that can induce them. things are getting a little hairy now. Now, even though it's in the middle of battle right now, I'm going for that power-up because I know it's one of the best ones you can get. It happens to be the radiation field power-up. And as you can imagine, it emits a huge field of radiation from the bottom of your base. Basically, any enemy that gets anywhere close to the base now is going to take constant amounts of damage. And considering all the assault I'm under, it's kind of useful. There's a Mastodontas. They're pretty tough enemies to deal with. I'm taking serious damage here. Sensors are really low on integrity, hull integrity is falling fast, life support's barely operational. This is the point in the game where you know you're screwed. The question is... Oh, that was fun. All the Zenmites get destroyed because of how close they were to the radiation field. But yeah, this is the point in the game where you're pretty much screwed, so now you're just trying to maximize your score. Yeah, life support's completely gone again. But the hull integrity's almost gone too, so now it's basically a race. Do I die from losing consciousness, or do I die from a hull integrity breach? That would be a hull integrity breach. Yeah, and that's Space Fortress 2. It's mostly just a micromanagement defense game, but it's got a lot to it, so if you like that kind of thing, you should take a look. And make sure you stay tuned for the next episode of Ancient DOS Games, episode 86. I'm going to be taking a look at an RPG that it has a first-person view, but instead of having just one big first-person view, like taking up the whole screen or something, it has 4 first-person views. And you simply move in the direction that you want to, as opposed to turning to face the direction you want to. It's kind of weird, but you can get used to it. So if you know which game it is, make sure you send your guess to adg@pixelships.com and stay tuned to see what this game's like.